I wanted to do a YouTube experiment. So for all my followers, I want you to do one thing for me right now. I want you to hit the like button. That's it. Just do that right now. We're going to get into the rest of this video, but I want you to hit the like button. Now, the other thing we're going to do in this video is I'm going to answer some questions. So we're going to do a Q&A in this video. And at the very end, I'm going to do all the freebies that you get with me that I've already put out, but I'm going to put the links in the description below. So if you're ready, let's get started. Welcome back to EDI Sports Cards. So in this video, we're gonna actually answer some questions. I saw all the comments. I try to respond on YouTube, but you know what? Some of the questions are so good, and I really appreciate all the followers that I have. I'm inching closer to 600. I would love if you guys could help me push to 1,000, because that means that I could actually start getting paid for this channel, which means that I would love to be able to use that money to obviously buy some cards, but I also would buy some packs to do as giveaways for you guys. So if you want me to be able to go to Target or Walmart and to sports card shows and buy some stuff that I can give away to you, help me get to 1,000 followers. So anyway, let's do the questions right now. So the first question comes from Ziggy No, and he asks about what about repacks? And so that's a very good question. That's a new thing that that Topps was doing. I don't know if Panini was doing it as well. I'm not sure if Fanatics is going to keep that. They just announced a few things at the Topps Summit here in Arizona a week ago, and that they didn't actually speak directly to repacks, but maybe they will do buybacks and send them back out. I will just say this: anything that comes from Topps, it's probably a good bet that you're at least not going to buy just complete garbage. Just going to say that. If anybody is making like other packs, like if you're talking about repacks that like breakers make, I'm just going to say that you're probably not going to get your money's worth. Unfortunately, they put certain cards into these packs, so someone gets lucky, but most people get unlucky. Like most of the cards you're going to get, yes, the book value will be there, but they're not cards that you could actually sell very easily. So my suggestion is I would save that money and just save up for the cards that you actually want, than trying to get into repacks or anything and the luck factor. I just, anything that has anything to do with lottery or betting, you're really taking a big risk, and I think you're just better off just saving that money and just buying the cards you want. You're probably going to be happier in the end because you're going to get the stuff that you want. All right, question number 2 comes from Chris Olivo. Will numbered ultra modern cards hold value? That's a really good question, and it's actually something that Topps addressed or Fanatics addressed in the Topps Summit in a week ago. And that's this ultra modern like rarity piece. Like, so the 1 of 1 or the 1 of 10, or, you know, in some cases these autograph cards that have like 20 different, you know, so they're numbered to 20, but there's 4 different variations. So there's a 1 to 10, there's a 1 to 20, there's a 1 to 35, and there's a 1 to 50. You know, so are they really rare or not? And that's a big problem. What I will say this is that the numbered cards specifically, not the numbered autograph cards or numbered autograph patch cards, and RPAs are a whole different story. I'm just talking about the numbered cards right now. So numbered cards, I would only collect the ones you like. Don't worry about the number. They're artificially rare. They're not rare. They're artificially rare. Will they hold any value in the future? I'll say this: they'll be worth more than base cards, but I don't know if they're going to be worth like anything close to what a superstar card will be. It's just, it is a gimmick. So if you like inserts, if you like special cards from the Junk Wax era, which some people do, if you like the Diamond King series, then you're going to like numbered cards. Now, that's different when we talk about autographs. Anytime you have an autograph, especially a certified autograph from the card companies, that's going to be worth more than just a numbered card. So I think that if you're collecting stuff that you want to have some value in your collection, then probably stick to numbered autograph cards, but collect the numbered cards if you like the way the card looks and if it fits within your collection. I'm curating my collection as we speak. I have a full a spreadsheet, and I'm going through as I'm selling cards off. And if you're on my Instagram, again, follow me on EDISportscards on Instagram. I have been posting what the listings are on eBay, so you can actually follow along with where I'm going. And I'm trying to experiment, like, how do you sell certain cards? Because there's a lot of cards that I have still. Again, if you hold in, if you buy and hold, you're a collector. And if you collect more than 10,000 cards, you're a hoarder just like me. And I have more than 10,000 cards. So the question is, how do you get rid of some of these bulk cards? That's my question in this hobby, is how do you get rid of some of the bulk cards? Now, I have other cards of star cards, Hall of Famers, that are more difficult to move. And a lot of you also don't seem to want to admit that these cards are not as easy to move as you think. Yes, if you're going to sell them for 99 cents, of course they're easy to move, but then that kind of throws your theory of that you can invest in sports cards, which is not my theory. That's your theory on YouTube. So just be aware of that. It's not as easy to move cards as you think. All right, next question. Let's go to Three Wheeler. And his question is, what about, and I have to see what I wrote. What about brokers? So this was actually on one of my videos about can you invest in sports cards. So if you haven't seen that playlist, here it is. There's a whole bunch. There's 5 reasons right now. I'm working on reason number 6. But one of the things that I talked about was that if you wanted to be able to invest in sports cards, which you can't do right now, and one of the reasons is because you are responsible to find the buyer. That's the problem that I just alluded to, which is that it's not as easy to move these cards. So this question is really good because if you created a market, yes, you could have brokers. And I think that would be smart for the hobby to do, because if you want to be able to, again, get rid of some of your inventory, get rid of some of the cards that you have in your collection because they no longer fit in your collection, where do you go? Like, you could try to go to a card show, but I'm just going to say this. When you're working in the $20 to $100 range, it's really hard to move those cards. And if you're not willing to sell dollar cards for 5 cents or 10 cents each, which to me is sort of like you're getting nothing. You basically, those cards are not worth anything, but they are if you can flip them for 74 cents on ComC or 99 cents on eBay. So I have a lot of cards that would sell for, again, between 74 and 99 cents. And I'm not looking for 50 cents on the dollar. I'm actually trying to sell them for 30 or 35 cents. So you could make double the amount of money on those cards or more if you could sell them for 99 cents each. The problem is, how do I find a buyer? Now, I know that people want to hustle. I know that people know that on the lower end, it's all about margin. So the question is, I have a whole bunch of commons from the 60s, from the 70s. These are all cards that you can legitimately sell. It just takes time and effort. And I would rather just sell in bulk and say, all right, look, I have, there's 100 cards for 30 cents each. That's $30 to you. You can sell them for 74 cents to 99 cents. And that's so That's $74 to $99. Well, that's a big profit margin if you do that a couple times. And I have, again, lots of 100 of a ton of 60s and 70s commons. How do I get rid of them? Because I don't want them. I don't need them. They're not part of my collection. So I would rather turn that over to you where you can make some money, so that I can take the cash and then, again, save it up for the cards that I'm actually shooting for. And there's a whole bunch of cards, and I've probably budgeted out, I think I need about $20,000 to get the collection that I want. Now, I'm going to have to do some trades because I have some valuable cards that I'm going to have to throw in to try to get to a place that I want to be. One of the cards that I want is 1941 play ball Shoeless Joe Jackson. Now, that's like a $7,000 or $8,000 card. So that's my point, is I'm probably going to have to trade into that. Now, I have a Ted Williams 1940 play ball. So, trying to like use some of these cards to be like, look, I'll give you this one for that one. You could kind of sometimes make those deals. All right, let's get to the next question. I'm sorry, I could talk a lot. So here we go. Next question. Baseball card poetics. Have the influencers used the 52 mantle and the Pete Rose rookie to create this fantasy that sports cards always go up in value? And I think that's an amazing question. So I want to thank Baseball Card Poetics for that question. I don't think that there was an intention of creating that fantasy. I think what happens is that there's a lot of people in the hobby who buy cards with the hope, again, and it's already a fantasy of investing. So people buy cards with the hope that they go to the moon. That's the hope. That doesn't happen for 99.9% of cards in the hobby. Now, there are rare occasions that does happen, and I don't think that it's the influencer's intention. I don't think it's even their fault, and I don't even think that it's a bad thing. I actually think it's really good for the hobby that you get high-profile media on these big, rare cards. I think that the sale of the 52 mantle, the 9.5 from Mr. Rosen's collection, I think getting that kind of attention in the media is actually a good thing for the hobby. The problem is that you can't then use that story to say, well, see, this is why I just spent $10,000 on this sports card. Because the likelihood that your $10,000 is going to go to $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 is very, very small. It might happen, but it's probably not going to happen. And I'm trying to come up with a better way to explain like grading and the grading process, because there's also a big misunderstanding about grading and how that works. So these vintage cards are going for big money if they graded high, because the reason is no one graded cards back in the day. Like, I have 40 years in this hobby, so I know what the hobby was like back in the 80s. And no one graded cards because, I'll put it this way, if you had extra cash, you bought the cards. You weren't going to waste your money on then grading it. And in all fairness to people that grade cards, it's sort of a waste of money to grade your cards. You don't get anything for it. Yes, it books value, but book value is not the same as cash. And that's what everybody needs to understand, is that your sports card collection may have value in a book, but it's not like you can go to a market and say, okay, here you go. This is worth $4,000. I'll take my $4,000 back. It's not the same as, like, an art piece is different. If you buy a piece of art at an auction, then that's actually the value of the art. If you want to sell that, you go back to the auction houses and they already know the market's set. We don't have that in the sports card hobby. We just don't have an actual market. It's just all over the map. So the volatility is the problem that you have to be aware of. So that Michael Jordan PSA 10 Fleer rookie card that went for $750,000 one time is now a big problem, because since then, and someone on YouTube even just told me that a PSA 10 just sold for $150,000. I'm telling you folks, if you own a Michael Jordan PSA 10, I would sell it now, because unless you want to keep it in your collection, because you're not going to get that kind of money. Like, take the money and run, use the money. Like, if you can get $150,000 for a card and you only paid, let's say, $1,000 for it, take the money. Like, you talk about investing, well, then take the money and run, because you're never going to get $150,000 for a card ever again. And to think that you will is the fantasy. So I don't know if I answered the question for you, poetics, but I tried. So let's see. Let's get to the next one. So Philly Joe is the next question, and he asks about fractional card market. Now, I don't know how many of you understand the fractional card, like the fractional market in stocks and in what actually took down our economy back in 2008. That was called the mortgage-backed securities, the MBS. If you haven't read The Big Short by one of my favorite authors, Michael Lewis, I highly recommend it. It was made into a movie with Steve Carell and Christian Bale. Big time movie. I think Brad Pitt was in it as well. This is, something that I hope that the hobby doesn't do. If we do have a market, I don't want fractional. I'll just put it this way. Fractional of something that doesn't have real value is a danger to you. Do not do it. Do not buy into any fractional anything. That's a complete scam. Stay away from it. You're better off buying a $2 lottery ticket. Trust me, you're better off buying a lottery ticket. All right, last question. This comes from Richard Price. And he asks, can a bid-ask market work in sports cards? And again, this goes back to that video on Can You Invest in Sports Cards, where I talk about if there was a real market so that you could go and bring your card to the market, and the market would have buyers and sellers there. And so if you wanted to move your cards, you could get the cash back and then put it into something else. Now, there's a lot of, it's like getting close. I will say this, with the vault system that's going on, that a lot of these companies are now doing, they're kind of moving in that direction. Because when you deal with a vault, you no longer hold the cards. So really, it's just a digital portfolio of the cards. Like, you theoretically own the card, but it's still a real card. Now, there is a danger for scamming in that situation, because that's exactly what happened in the Bernie Madoff situation, where he created invoices for people that they owned stock, but they didn't own any stock. He never actually made the trades. He just faked the trades. So I'm got a problem with no regulation in the sports card market, that I would be very worried about a card vault from some of these companies. Not to say that they're disreputable, but it's just, how do you know that you own the card? So my suggestion to any of these companies that have card vaults is that I would say that you have to send a photo of the card that the person owns and have it with a sticker that says your name, your account number, or some kind of identification that it's your card. So as I don't know how they're storing these cards, like I don't know how they keep them separated so that you have your stuff and other people have their stuff. And that would be the biggest worry that I have with card vaults. But I think it's a good idea. And the more you go down that road, I think it's possible to do a bid-ask market. And that would make sports cards accessible to so many more people. Because at that point, you don't have the problem that I'm running into and that a lot of you run into, is what do you do when you want to sell? See, everybody talks about book value. That's great, except that no one's putting cash down. And that means that it's not a real investment. If people aren't willing to pay for the cards, even though there's value there, that's not an investment. And that's what we're seeing in the housing market right now, is that housing has this problem that housing goes through cycles. So when it goes up, everybody wants to buy a home. When it goes down, no one wants to buy a home. I mean, you couldn't sell a home today, even if you put it out for basically nothing, because no one wants to go to the banks for a mortgage. No one wants to deal with it because they're just so afraid of the market that it's not an investment. Basically, the only reason you should buy a home right now is because you need a home. You're not buying a home because you want to flip it or you think it's going to go up. Like, no, actually today, if you buy a house, it's probably going to be worth less next year and the year after that. We're in a down cycle in the housing market. I believe we're in the same down cycle in sports cards. And so again, all of these influencers that are trying to hype up that the market hit the bottom and it's fine. What I want everybody to understand is that I've been doing this for 40 years. I've seen ups and downs in the hobby. I'm going through, because I'm trying to build for you guys a whole bunch of series of videos where I go through decade by decade the top players that you should be looking at to own in your PC if you want a PC of value. Now, that doesn't mean that you should get all of these players. It's just these are the players that you should be looking at, and you choose the players you want in your collection. Like, I'm not, some of these cards that I will suggest I will not collect. They're not players that I care about. They're not teams that I care about. But because I'm doing this in general, I want to make sure that I include all of the superstars. Like, I will never own an Alex Rodriguez card because I don't care about A-Rod. I don't like A-Rod. I could, whatever. A-Rod, do your thing. I like him as a business person, but as a baseball player, I did not care. So that's my point, is I'm not going to own an A-Rod card. But there are other players that I will own because I either like the card or whatnot. Like Carl Yastrzemski is a good example. Like, I'm not a big Yaz fan, but there's a 76 card, I think it is, that it reminds me of the era. Again, I was a little kid back then, so I wasn't old enough to really understand what was going on. But as an era, I understood there was an image, and that card reminds me of that era. So is the card very valuable? No, it's probably like a $10 card. But for my collection, I'm trying to curate a story, and so that you'll be able to see through the years. And I go back, like my oldest card is actually a 1908 card. So I go back way into history. Now, there are cards that are older than mine that I don't own. There are cards from the 19th century, the 1800s. I don't own any of those. I've never seen them in person, and so I never had the opportunity to buy them. If I did, I probably would have bought them, because when I was buying cards back in the 80s, I bought every old card I could find. So I have a whole collection of T206s, and I actually just did all the research on those cards. I thought they were all T06s, but they're not. Like, they're not all T206s. Some of them were caramels, some of them were T207s, some of them were, I have an E95. Like, I was not aware of the variations of some of these older cards, which all come from around 1909 to 1915. So again, way back in that day. But I'm lucky because when I did buy those cards, I was able to find, so I have a Christy Mathewson and I do have a Frank Chance. Now, I would like to get a Tinkers and an Evers. So for those of you that don't know baseball history, that was the first double play combination in baseball, in the Hall of Fame, Tinkers to Evers to Chance. And so that's part of the history of baseball. And so I'm trying to curate a collection that kind of tells the story of Americana through the years and through the images of these cards. So I want to thank everybody. So those are the questions. They're going to do the freebies right now. All right. So the first freebie is if you want the free guide to collecting sports cards, you can get it for free right here in the description below. This is what it looks like. Absolutely, it's a great guide. I hope that you enjoy it. Now, the other thing that you can also do is I'm collecting data on trying to build a video for you guys on what cards are worth. And so there are 3 cards that you go to the Google form, put in the dollar amount you would pay for these 3 cards, and that link is in the description below as well. I already have over 25 people who have signed or entered that database. I'll call it a database because it's raw data at this moment. But we need 1,000 entries in order for that data to be considered what's called validated. And the reason you need 1,000 is because it teases out any data breaches. So any anomalies, once you reach 1,000, and if you know anything about polling data, that's actually what polls need in order to be validated, even with a margin of error. So I'll still have a margin of error in terms of how much, up or down the prices will be. I won't know what that margin of error will be until I get all of the data, but I'll be able to calculate that margin as well as give you what these cards are actually worth. And if you have a suggestion for a card that you would like me to collect data on, please put it in the comments below. Now, I asked you at the beginning of this video to hit the like button because it's a YouTube experiment. And the experiment is I want to see what helps the YouTube algorithm actually push this video into recommendations. Because I get a ton of comments, but I don't really see the videos getting a lot of recommends. And so I'm wondering if the like button does anything. So I appreciate if you hit the like button. Obviously, please share this. Please keep giving me comments. I will answer more questions in another video if you put your questions down in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you're enjoying the end of winter. And I know for a lot of you, you got a lot of snow. We're coming up to, we have opening day in just a month. Spring training's going on. So all of you, if you want to DM me or you want to get in touch, go to the Instagram, EDISportscards. You can see it right here on the screen, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.